Law 11 is the shortest law in the law book, even shorter than Law 2, which covers the ball. The language used to explain offside is very precise. The challenge of offside is not in the explanation of the law, but its application. To start with, we need to define offside position. A player is in offside position when he or she meets three requirements. The player is closer to the attacking goal line than the second to last defender. The player is closer to the attacking goal line than the ball. And the player is in the attacking half of the field. Let's look at some graphics to better illustrate the principle of offside position. In this first example, the attacker is in the attacking half of the field. The last defender is the goalkeeper, and the second to last defender is here. You can clearly see that the attacker is closer to the goal line than the second to last defender. The ball is up closer to the halfway line, so the attacker is clearly in offside position. This is the simplest and most common illustration of offside position. In this next example, the attacker is now closer to the offside line, much closer to the second to last defender. As you can see, from this angle, it becomes extraordinarily difficult for the referee to judge offside position. In the first example, the referee can see the lines on the field and judge distances to almost make the call himself. But in this current example, the distance that the attacker is past the second to last defender is so small, we need to find the right angle to make the correct judgment. Therefore, this becomes the primary function of the assistant referee, and also why it is so crucial for the assistant referee to remain even with the second to last defender or the ball at all times. More on that momentarily. In this situation, the attacker is even with the second to last defender. In order to be in offside position, the attacker must be closer to the goal line than the second to last defender and the ball. So in this situation, the attacker is not in offside position. If we look at this more closely, FIFA defines closer as any body part which can legally play the ball. If the attacker's head, foot, leg, or body is closer than the goal line than any other part of the defender, he is considered to be closer to the goal line. However, if the attacker's arm or hand is closer, these body parts cannot legally play the ball, and therefore we would not consider the attacker to be in offside position if only the hand or arm were closer. In this situation, the attacker is even with the last two defenders. This is not offside position, regardless of which one of these two defenders may be the second to last defender. If the attacker is even with both of them, he is not in offside position. In this example, the attacker is closer to the goal line than the second to last defender, but he is not closer to the goal line than the ball. An attacker may be behind the ball or even with it, and is then not in offside position. Even if the attacker is beyond both of the last two defenders, if the attacker is not closer to the attacking goal line than the ball, he is not in offside position. Finally, remember the final requirement for offside position is that the attacker has to be in the attacking half of the field. Here we see an attacker ahead of the ball and ahead of the second to last defender, but in his own half of the field, and therefore the attacker is not in offside position. Looking at this more closely, we have to define the halfway line as part of the defending half of the field. An attacker who is touching the halfway line but has no part of his body over it is not considered to be in offside position. One and the same if an attacker has part of his body over the halfway line. In order to be a candidate for offside position, that body part must be one that can legally play the ball. Standing at the halfway line and stretching one's arm over the halfway line while the rest of the body remains in the defending half is not offside position. So why spend so much time worrying about what offside position is? Well, if we're going to have a rule and where attackers in offside position create an indirect free kick, we'd better be able to define what offside position is and also be able to discriminate easily between being offside and being onside. Law 11, however, expressly states that a player cannot be punished for being in offside position unless that player becomes involved in the play after the ball is played by a teammate. This is an important distinction and one that probably causes more angst than any other clause in the laws of the game. Before we get into what quote, involved in active play means, we need to point out the importance of not punishing a player who is simply in offside position. Law 11 expressly states that it is not an offense to be in offside position. In each of the offside positions we illustrated on the previous slide, simply being in that position is not a reason for the player to be punished. Soccer is a very dynamic sport with players constantly on the move. If we punished attackers every time they wandered into offside position, you can imagine we would be making calls constantly and awarding indirect free kicks until we were blue in the face. Therefore, understand that just because a player is in offside position does not mean that the player needs to be called for being offside. So when do we call offside? The answer to that question is when an offside player becomes involved in active play. FIFA defines a player becoming involved in active play in three specific ways: interfering with play, interfering with an opponent, and gaining an advantage from being in offside position. Unfortunately, that list probably leaves you with more questions, so let's take a look at each of these three possibilities in detail. The first means of becoming involved in active play is interfering with play. FIFA specifically defines interfering with play as playing or touching a ball that is passed to him or her by a teammate. This needs further explanation before we go further. The most obvious application of this clause is when an offside player has a ball passed to him or her from a teammate. At the moment that the offside player touches the ball, the assistant referee should raise the flag to indicate that offside should be punished. Playing a ball is also considered interfering in play. Note that the clause states playing or touching. The fact that it discriminates between the act of touching the ball and other actions means that a player who is playing a ball may be doing so without actually touching it. A common mistake is to watch an assistant referee fail to raise the flag when the ball is played through or over the top to an offside player who is clearly the only attacker with an opportunity to play the ball but has not yet touched it. The assistant will continue to run on the play when it is clear that only the offside player has an opportunity to play the ball. And doing so means you could have frustrated defenders who then foul the offside player for fear that that attacker could gain a scoring opportunity. This is not in the best interest of game control. If no other onside player has an opportunity to play the ball, and the offsides player attempt to play the ball is forcing defenders to contest for the play, the offside call should be made and no delay should take place. However, a crucial component of application of the offside clause is what is called the wait and see approach. In a situation where two attackers have an opportunity to play the ball, one offside and the other onside, the assistant referee should wait to make sure that the offside player is actually the one that plays the ball. As long as the onside player has an opportunity to get to the ball and play it, the call should be delayed. We wait and see. The offside player may, at the last minute, realize that the onside player has an opportunity to play the ball and could peel away, and in this case, no call should be made. The offside player is the player who winds up playing it, then he should be called for offside. The second means of becoming involved in active play is interfering with an opponent. This interference comes about in one of two methods. More commonly, obstructing the view of an opponent so that they can't see the ball, such as standing in front of the goalkeeper while in offside position to make it difficult to see an incoming shot. Or, from an offside position, physically impeding an opponent from being able to move to the ball. The first method, as previously mentioned, is the most common means of interfering with an opponent. Typically, an attacker drifts into an offside position and winds up standing in front of the goalkeeper, at which point a teammate hits a shot that the goalkeeper cannot see because of the offside player. This is becoming involved in active play, and the attacker should be penalized for offside. The second method is rather rare, but consider a pass played into space, away from an attacker who is in offside position, perhaps intended for a different onside attacker. A defender might have a chance at challenging for the ball or perhaps gaining a good defensive position once the onside attacker reaches the ball. However, the offside attacker's position interferes with the defender's ability to get into position. Again, the offside attacker has interfered with an opponent and should be called for offside. The third and final means of becoming involved in active play is by benefiting from an offside position. Specifically, this will be a situation where the offside player gains access to a rebound or deflection that was originally played by a teammate due to the advantage gained from being in offside position. There are several such possibilities. The most common means of this third clause coming into play involves a shot by a teammate with an attacker in offside position but not obstructing the view of the goalkeeper. The goalkeeper may save the shot but spill the rebound, or the ball may deflect off the frame of the goal. At this point, the offside attacker, offside when the ball was struck by his teammate, reaches the rebound first and scores. The attacker has gained an advantage from the offside position and should be called for offside. A second possible means is from a simple deflection from a defender, not the goalkeeper, that rebounds to the offside attacker. Here the attacking team plays a lateral pass to an onside attacker. The defender has the ball hit him in the back, at which point it bounces to a third attacker who is in an offside position. The offside player has gained an advantage from his position, and the offside call should be made. A final component of the offside rule that has to be emphasized here is that the offside infraction is judged when the ball is played by a teammate, and that deflections do not reset the offside decision. This becomes very important to differentiate. If a defender is making a purposeful play on the ball and misplays it to an attacker in an offside position, the attacker should not be penalized for offside. There is one exception written in the laws of the game that we will discuss shortly. However, if the defender simply deflects the ball, such as sticking a leg out to block a pass or a shot, and the ball takes an uncontrolled deflection, this does not reset the decision, and if that ball deflects to an offside attacker, the attacker should be penalized for offside. The exception to that is a save by a goalkeeper. Because a shot can be very difficult to handle, a rebound from a shot should be always considered a deflection. In the laws, it states that a, quote, deliberate save that rebounds to an offside attacker should be considered offside. Even though the goalkeeper is purposefully playing the ball, this does not reset the offside decision, and should the ball rebound to an offside attacker, offside should be called. We also have to be aware of deliberate misplays by defenders when judging offside. These incidents occur very rarely, and it can be a knee-jerk reaction on the part of the assistant. Oh, that attacker's offside. He's receiving the ball. I have to raise my flag. All of the referee crew must pay close attention to who is playing the ball when making an offside decision. An offside attacker may demonstrate that he or she does not want to become involved in active play. The attacker does this by making some sort of gesture or motion that clearly shows a desire to not become involved in the play. This can be done by raising the hands and going what is known as, quote, passive, or even simply running away from the ball to indicate no desire to play it. They can also step off the field to show a desire to stay out of play. Please be advised that the decision to become passive only affects the first and third of the three active involvement clauses. A player who interferes with an opponent from an offside position cannot show that they have no desire to interfere. They either interfere with the opponent or they don't. Perhaps they can try not to interfere, but the level of interference is up to the decision of the officiating crew, and it's possible for a player trying not to interfere to still obstruct the view of a goalkeeper or impede the path of a defender. Once this happens, the attacker is involved in the play, even if he or she does not want to be. A defender may not step off the field in order to put an attacker in offside position. The laws strictly note that a defender who deliberately leaves the field is considered to be on the touchline or goal line for the purpose of judging offside. Furthermore, as we will learn very shortly, a defender who does this is also cautioned or yellow carded for leaving the field without permission. Be reminded that on 3 of the boundary line restarts, attackers may not be penalized for being in offside position when the ball is played and receiving the ball directly. An offside attacker may receive the ball directly from a throw-in, goal kick, or corner kick and cannot be penalized for offside. Also, remember on the 4th and final boundary line restart, the kickoff, the kicking team is not permitted to be in offside position. The only restarts where players can be in offside position and be called for offside are the direct free kick and the indirect free kick. On the dropped ball, offside cannot be called from the drop, though once the ball is in play, a player can be penalized for offside. And as we'll find out shortly, like the kickoff, it's impossible to be in offside position at the taking of a penalty kick. The penalty for offside is an indirect free kick at the location where the offside attacker was. This is signaled by the assistant referee by halting, facing the field, and raising the flag straight up in the right hand. Upon the referee blowing the whistle to halt play, the assistant drops the flag and points across the field, up at 45 degrees to indicate the restart is on the far side, 90 degrees to indicate the middle of the field, and down at 45 degrees to indicate the near side of the field. Because the assistant is in line with the second to last defender, the defense usually lines up the indirect free kick with the assistant, even though the offside attacker could be 10 yards closer to the goal line or more. While the laws do say that the kick is to be taken from the location of the attacker, in practicality, we usually just line the defending team's indirect free kick up with where the assistant stopped running. In certain situations, the referee may not see the offside flag right away. The assistant referee should stand at attention with the flag raised, either until the referee sees the flag and stops play, or the attack ends, or the referee sees the flag and waves the assistant referee down. This can sometimes take dozens of seconds or even a minute depending on the alertness of the referee. As an assistant, don't drop the flag if the attacking team is continuing to attack the goal with possession unless the referee instructs you to do so. It is important that you continue to indicate an infraction has occurred so that, should the attacking team actually score, there is a reference point to indicate the goal should not be allowed. When we say that the flag should be held, quote, until the attack ends, this is generally implied to be either when the goalkeeper takes possession of the ball with his or her hands, when the ball is cleared by the defense into the opposite half of the field, or if the ball goes out for a restart that is controlled by the defending team. We encourage the crew to use common sense here. If the ball goes out for a goal kick or throw-in very close to the goal line, and at this point the referee notices the assistant standing at attention 5 yards from the halfway line, it probably would be preferred by the defending team to have an indirect free kick near the halfway line instead of a throw-in deep in its own end or a goal kick. The best way to keep the players and coaches off your back is to understand the game from their perspective and make decisions that benefit the game.